Hey everyone, welcome to the weekend edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, you seen him here yesterday up on the top right there, Alex Ooley from the Ooley Law Offices in Indiana. Also the O2 Gun Group training is Alex is with. On right below me on the bottom left, Beth Alcazar has a brand new book coming out. And we're going to be talking with her about that a little bit. Beth, of course, is USCCA. And on the bottom right, Dan Wos. Dan, of course, is the author of the book series Good Gun, Bad Guy. And we'll be talking about those as well as getting a progress report on Good Gun, Bad Guy 4 before I let him go off the air today. I want to remind everybody as we get started, this is a week in review show. We're going to be talking about stories that are up to a week old. And if you want to get your comments in, if you're watching on the Polite Society Podcast, Facebook, or YouTube feed, go ahead and comment on that live video. We'll get those comments. If you're watching anywhere else on a different Facebook page, or if you're watching on OpsLens or anywhere else, go to Twitter and tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet. We'll get those comments as well and put those up on the screen. We'll discuss them as we go along today. And let me go over to show. I want to mention here real quick before we go, it is 809 days until the next presidential inauguration, at least the next one that we voted for. So the clock is ticking. It's a little slow, but we're getting there. 809 days till Inauguration Day, and I want to put me up on screen here. I want to do a rant here real fast. I was perusing through Facebook today. I'm not going to name the person in case they're watching, and I don't want to embarrass them, but they commented today that they had their truck gun stolen out of their truck, and they posted a picture of the gun and how, poor me. But, folks, I am so against truck guns simply because if you aren't in your vehicle, neither should your firearm be. I don't care if you lock it. I don't care if it's in a lock box and stuffed somewhere in the vehicle. If that car goes away, so does your firearm. And by the way, you just gave a deadly weapon to somebody who would steal a car. So, yeah, if you're going to be in your car with your firearm, make sure it's in a holster and on your hip. That's my little rant for the day. I seen that and I didn't want to comment. I didn't want to embarrass them, but holy cow, people, All right.
Yeah, in Indiana, it reminds me of a story actually in Indiana where someone left a firearm in their truck, and the truck was unlocked, but someone stole the firearm and then subsequently used it in a crime. And there was some debate about whether the person whose firearm it belonged to would be liable for any sort of criminal charges. And the answer in Indiana was no, but that doesn't mean that you could not be sued civilly for monetary damages. And I don't know if that person was ever sued civilly, but not only are you risking people getting hurt with your firearm, but you're also risking personal liability potentially, at least monetarily, if not criminally.
Sure. And we're already getting comments about C&T Designs at Arms. Man, let me go check my truck now. Be right back. So, let's go ahead. Let's get started on stories for this week. First one, this is a Lee Williams story. Of course, Lee Williams is part of the SAF and the SAF investigative reporting branch. He leads that. But the anti-gun activists at the Trace, propaganda arm for the former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg's vast anti-gun empire, have created a new boogeyman for their ongoing war against our guns: killer gas stations. In a story published Monday titled Gas Stations Become a Magnet for Violence in Philadelphia, the author would have you hold your breath, suspend all disbelief, and actually accept that mom and pop gas stations somehow play a role in the escalating gang violence sweeping the city, even though the author's own data does not support such a claim. Digging down deeper in the story, citywide between January 1st, 2021 and now, there have been 1,021 homicides in Philadelphia. 9 of those were at gas stations. So that's less than, as Lee points out, that's less than 1% of the murders in Philly are at gas stations. So if you live in Philly, keep your head on a swivel, of course, no matter where you are. But are gas stations really that evil? Not really.
We would definitely want to know what the statistical relevance was on that kind of data, because if you're looking at most statistics that are out there, something that low is not something one would normally pay that close attention to. In fact, if I want to maybe compare it to something local, it sounds like it's about as statistically relevant as the kinds of things that are happening in our local Target and Walmart and other big box stores. So I guess here in Alabama, maybe instead of gas station violence, we're suffering from big box store violence. But, it's not surprising. If we're going to blame the gun or blame the accessories or blame the gun owners or blame the NRA, why not blame gas stations now? I think that fits really well.
Blame anybody but the criminal.
Haven't you heard about all the mom and pop little gas station shop owners in cahoots with the Bloods and the Crips? What, you haven't heard about this? This is so ridiculous.
Now we're going to be conspiracy theorists.
Right. No, yeah, but like Beth said, it's anything that they can blame the violence on, other than the criminal themselves. It's ridiculous, but that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Blame the gun, blame the blame the gun laws, blame the background checks, blame the gas station. So it's just stupid. What these people need to do is they need to start focusing on the criminals, because in a lot of states, like my state in New York, you've got a governor, a previously appointed governor, who is letting criminals out of jail, early release and bail reform and all this nonsense, and then trying to crack down on gun laws as using the violence as justification for more gun laws, when, hey, here's an idea. It's pretty simple. Let's just stop the criminals. Let's work on that, and let's leave the gun laws alone so the law-abiding citizens can actually have access to their Second Amendment right. So,
and this is a classic example of government setting up a boogeyman to chase and try to solve a problem that doesn't exist, instead of looking at the actual problem. Because if they solve the actual problem, there would be no reason to give them more power. And so let's set up this false problem, chase after it, deprive law-abiding citizens of their rights in the meantime, and continue to usurp more power and give politicians more money to further their political ends. So there's countless examples of this, the war on terror, the war on drugs, etc. Just name anything. The government focuses on something that's not the actual problem at the expense of law-abiding citizens.
Yeah,
Alex, that brings up an interesting point too. I mean, if that's going to be the focus, what's going to be the outcome, or what's maybe the underlying thought process there? Are we going to now say that guns are not allowed at gas stations? Will that be the next area that are going to fall under this scrutiny, and then someone is going to say, oh my gosh, because we've got so much quote unquote violence here, maybe these need to be gun-free zones? And think about the impact of that. The gas station is basically the watering hole of the human world. Everybody needs to go to a gas station. So imagine if someone got their hands on this and decided this is real data. It is statistically relevant data. We need to look at this boogeyman more carefully. We need to start to regulate whether or not people can have guns in these areas. Think about how devastating and how stupid that whole I guess, attack would be if people decided to follow these lines of thinking. So that's a very interesting point we need to think about. What are they trying to accomplish here?
Well, and what I want to add to that, if they were to make, generally when they make a guns-free zone, they make a gun-free zone at this place and within 100 yards of this place. If you were to ban possessing firearms within every gas station and around 100 yards every gas station in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, you'd eliminate the city. They're just all over the place. So, comment from C&T Designs and Arms, where do you go and put gas in the stolen car you're using in the drive-bys? Well, you're just out of luck, C&T, man, at least in Philly.
Right, so don't bring your stolen gun and your stolen car to the gas station at the same time or you'll be in big trouble.
Yes.
Or your truck gun.
Or your truck gun, yes. Yes. He also said, now dang it, those ultra-dangerous gas stations are just running wild here. And this guy's on fire, man. You don't need gas stations if you are broke down in your electric car. Okay. Don't get me started on electric cars. Let's go ahead and move on to our next story here. This is a John Petrolino story, and I've got something that goes with this. On Monday, November 14th, there was an Assembly Judiciary Committee meeting concerning A4769. The bill would be making nearly all of New Jersey into a de facto sensitive place and a larger financial burden to applicants seeking a permit to carry, a firearms ID card, or a pistol purchase permit. This causes applicants to provide more references, makes permit to carry holders have a non-existent and illegal, and by the way, banned by Murphy's executive order, insurance policy, bans people from carrying in their cars, and there was even mention into looking into social media accounts. And there's one Representative McKeon. I'm gonna bring this up here. This is what he said during this hearing.
No, I'm passionate about this issue too because in my opinion, maybe tone deaf isn't the right word as opposed to just maybe a little bit disingenuous. Do either of you, does anybody really want to put more guns in the hands of people that live in Patterson and Newark and Elizabeth and Camden to say here, oh, the money you're charging isn't fair? That'll make things safer? Please.
All right, and let me give out some, and John Petrolino listed the four cities that were mentioned there. Patterson has the following population demographics: 8.6% white, 29.4% black, 57.2% are classified as Hispanic. Newark, white is 10.7%, black 50.2%, and 34.1% are classified as Hispanic. Elizabeth and Camden, very similar. These are very heavily minority populated cities. And yet nobody's calling this guy out, other than John Petrolino. Nobody's calling this guy out on being a racist.
You know, Paul, I used to play in rock bands, and we used to practice. We'd play mostly in Manhattan, but we'd practice in Patterson, Lodi, and those areas right around there. And not the nicest part of town, but you're absolutely right. You know, it's these people using minorities as a tool. Again, if they're constantly doing this, and if I got this right, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I listened to his audio, he's saying, why do we want to put guns in the hands of these people after we're charging them more money for something? I'm not sure exactly what they were talking about, but are going to start shooting the lawmakers? Is that what he's saying? Because that's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, I think he's just scared of the general public, and he thinks the general public, especially when it comes to minorities, are just going to run amok if they get a firearm, even if they've paid and went through the background check and got the training. I think he's just saying that these people are so far below us, do we really want them having firearms?
Yeah, and you know another interesting thing about this is that when people say stuff like that, when they say, well, I think you're going to do this if in this situation, what they're really doing is they're kind of, implying or projecting their own thoughts on the situation. In other words, why would they think someone else would do this if they weren't actually thinking it themselves? So the people that I want to worry about and be concerned with are the people making these accusations, because it's in their thought process that they're talking about this stuff. People lashing out if they have guns on them because of more prices and things like that, increased prices. This is a problem with the people making the accusations, and nobody ever focuses on that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. They're sort of projecting onto other people doubts they have about themselves. Like, I don't trust myself with a firearm. I can't trust other people with a firearm. So I think that is partly what's going on. And I mean, listen here, he's clearly saying, I don't want black people and Hispanic people to have firearms, without saying exactly, I don't want black people and Hispanic people to have firearms, by naming these various places that are primarily populated by black and Hispanic people. And what's interesting is that, in light of Bruin, anti-gun people have sort of embraced the racist history of gun control, because the first examples of gun control were after the Reconstruction era, after the Civil War, when there were people who didn't want newly freed slaves to have firearms. And so gun control laws were put into place to restrict access to firearms for these newly freed slaves. And gun control advocates have sort of embraced that. And I was interested to see where they would go with that, but they've sort of embraced that racist history for the furtherance of their political goals with respect to gun control.
Yeah. Let me get this comment up here real quick. Gun websites on the YouTube side. Well, every single person paying attention I follow on Instagram called that guy as soon as he said it. Dozens of accounts. That's true. Where I was going was nobody in the mainstream media, because that is so obviously racist. Nobody from nobody that I follow in the regular media, and I do a web search every day for news. The regular media never, ever, ever picked up on that, even though it's been everywhere John Petrolino writes, it shows up. I've talked about it. Others have talked about it, and like you said, Pete, it's over Instagram, but regular media, and when they love jumping on racism stories, stayed the heck off of this one.
Well, and that's the point right there, Paul. I think they probably do recognize that the comments are very potentially racist. I mean, the fact that he says, does anybody want the folks in these areas to have guns? I mean, it's such a very derogatory and terrible thing to say. But even if the media did pick up on that, they don't want to put that out there. They don't want to show that there are folks who are part of their camp or part of their belief system, or who are, anti-gun, who believe these things or perpetuate these things. I think we also have to consider the fact that the statement that he makes, just speaking of perpetuating it, perpetuates this idea that guns equal violence. I mean, the way that he says this, does anybody want these people or these towns to have more guns? Maybe he's insinuating there's more crime, there's more violence, there's more problems or issues. But that's because anti-gun automatically believe that guns are violent tools, whereas we are trying to make sure people understand guns are self-defense tools. And we've got to continue to bring those statistics and those ideas to the surface to combat people like him that continue to say that, yeah, I mean, I don't know about guns, and guns are dangerous, and guns cause dangerous things, and guns equal violence, and look at the violence, and et cetera, et cetera. We've got to be really careful about that narrative and call people out on that too. Not just the potential for blatant racism, but the fact that he's perpetuating these myths about guns.
Yeah, and they get caught up in their own narrative too, because that all centers around the so-called gun violence narrative, and the idea that they can take this term gun violence and make people believe that guns can be violent. I mean, there are people who literally believe that guns can go off by themselves. They're so scared at this point of guns, and then if they can't catch people on the whole gun violence thing, they can make them believe that guns will cause people to do violent things. and so this guy here probably believes that. Either that, or he believes that a gun in his own hand would cause him to do something violent. I don't know, but I think these people are really unhinged at this point. And just the idea that guns can cause people to do bad things, as if they wouldn't have done the bad thing without the gun. It's just a preposterous notion, and unfortunately, people who don't know any better, or people who can't think, believe it.
Yeah, I'm on.
Yep.
Pete over at Gun Website says silence can be a form of censorship, eh? Oh, you bet it can, and a very effective one.
I'd like to go back to the point by Beth and Dan. You know, that a lot of this fear stems from ignorance, and I think we need to be doing the best we can to educate people, especially people who are sort of in the middle on the issue or sort of indifferent toward it, because I think those are the people who we can influence the most. And whether that be through social media or getting out and taking somebody new to the range. I know that Tom Gresham on Gun Talk advocates that as one of the most effective ways to change people's minds about firearms. It's just take the time and take people to the range, and hopefully that has sort of a domino effect. And I think for listeners who aren't familiar with David Yamani, he has the Gun Culture 2.0 website, and I think he wrote a book. I think that he has some great insights about how people who are sort of new to guns come to the topic, approach the topic. And I think for those of us who have been around guns our whole lives, who are sort of engulfed or entrenched in the culture of guns, I think we can gain a lot of insight from his observations. He has a class at Wake Forest that it's about like the sociology of guns. And he takes his class to the range throughout the class, or at the end of the class at least. And it's amazing the perception that his students have after having taken the class and going to the range. And maybe that fear or anxiety they had about firearms at the beginning, they no longer had once they understood what it was all about.
I want to get some comments in here real quick. Gun Websites again from YouTube. Beth is 100% there. The non-racist part of his fear-mongering is all about guns are the problem, and that depends on the majority of people ignorant on guns. DC Project, this show, etc. are normalizing guns. And then I want to get this. We got more comments coming in. I want to get to 500 Magnum, and I'm going to put you solo on the screen, Dan. 500 Magnum says, that's a cool guitar behind you, Dan. So
yeah, that's a Les Paul. That's a Gibson Les Paul Classic. It's a reissue from a 1960s model. It's a real hot guitar, and if you play guitar and you get your hands on one of those, you're gonna like it.
Yeah, I
thank you, by the way.
I disagree with that at all. Let's see here, and Pete says, Professor David Yamani, Gun Culture, how a liberal professor became an armed American, and then gives the website. So yeah, if you're watching anywhere else and you want to get that link, go over to the Polite Society Podcast Facebook feed. That link will be in the comments. Just look for the Gun Website's comment there. And let's see, where am I? I'd seen one more that I wanted to put up, but I'm getting so many comments that I think it scrolled off my main page here. So I apologize. I try to get to comments as quickly as I can. Sometimes if I get a lot of comments, they scroll off my feed. So Alex, you and I talked about this one yesterday when we had the Legal Friday edition of the Bullet. There's a judge in the Western District of Texas that has ruled if you have a restraining order against you but no criminal convictions, you retain your Second Amendment rights. The Lautenberg Amendment that passed in the late 90s, early 2000 said that if you have a restraining order against you, that, yeah, you lose your gun rights. And this federal judge now looking at Bruin has said that's not the case. This is only Western District of Texas. This isn't even the Fifth Circuit, although I expect it to probably get there. So right now, if you're in Western Texas and you've got a restraining order, you could possibly go buy guns again.
Yeah, I think that the point that this is something in light of Bruin that is not supported by the historical tradition of firearms regulation. There's no analog for this sort of restriction from the time of the founding. And I think that's the appropriate era to look to. Obviously, there's been a lot of debate about what era of history we look to for analogs for restrictions on the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. But I think the judge decided this one correctly. And listen, prohibiting someone from possessing a firearm because they're subject to a protective order is not effective. Let's just put it lightly. The protective order is commonly known as being a piece of paper and is not going to protect the person if they are truly in danger. So it's one of those things like we expect people who are criminals to follow the law. It just seems unrealistic. If somebody wants to hurt someone, they're going to hurt that person. So I think that taking away, this is more likely to affect law-abiding people who are not going to hurt someone in the first place, right? So I think that prohibitions based on protective orders being in place are not only unconstitutional, but they're ineffective.
Well, I have the same argument for red flag laws, and I think they're very similar. They go and take guns away from a person. They don't take the pickup truck away. They don't take the axe away. They don't take away the 5-gallon cans of gasoline that are in the garage. They don't take away anything else, just guns. They then leave that person torqued off and in the general public. If they really are a problem, yeah, let's get them locked up. And I feel the same way about protective orders. If this person really is a danger, they probably belong in jail, not just wandering around in the public saying, you don't go near that other person. Not going to work.
Yeah, no, it's not for the purpose. Like the red flag laws are just under the guise of public safety. Because you made it clear, Paul, as soon as they focus on the gun and getting the gun out of the house and doing nothing else to prevent all the other problems that could arise, it's clear that what the real focus is the gun. I mean, these laws are created under, like I said, under the guise of public safety, but really the intent is to take as many guns away from people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can totally understand how this one could be a very emotional issue too. And honestly, we have to try our best to remove that emotional side of things as well. You know, being a woman looking at this, you might go, well, that's a terrible decision. But honestly, we also have to think about the flip side. What about the wrongly accused? What about the spouse or the partner or the person who has been accused by someone? Think about the vindictive nature of human beings, and someone could be, fingers pointed at them and a piece of paper given to them to say, now you can't, be anywhere near me. But what if I'm really the problem? And now it's the whole red flag scare all over again, because we have to imagine who's coming up with this narrative or who's coming up with this story, and where is the truth? There's just way too many hypotheticals and false predictions, or again, those red flag ideas that I don't want to step into that madness, and again, to Alex's point, who's to say any of that's even going to work anyway? So we have to look at both sides, whether it is a person that is going to cause harm or could cause harm, they're going to find another way. Or on the flip side of it, it's someone innocent who's just been wrongly accused by someone who is now looking for this loophole and looking for an opportunity to go, ha, now you don't have your firearm. So.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's a good point. It's like, so what's to stop the batterer from accusing the battered of being the risk? And the cops come in and take, let's say it's the woman who's being abused in the relationship. What's to say the cops won't come in and take the one thing she might have to protect herself because her abuser accused her of being a risk? So these laws are dangerous, and they can be used in all different directions. They don't help at all. As a matter of fact, Gary Willis, a guy in Maryland, was shot and killed in his own home when they came at 5 a.m. to confiscate his guns under a red flag law. That was a false accusation by a family member. They come to his house. There's a scuffle at the front door at 5 a.m. He goes to the door with his gun because that's what you would do if somebody's knocking on your door at 5 a.m. And he ends up getting killed. So these laws are horrible, but I think the people who are implementing the laws, they know this. They're not stupid people. They're doing all this for a reason, some heinous reason. I can't understand why, but right. Though these laws can be used in all different directions on all different types of people.
And we talked about this a little bit last night, Paul, but the other danger with these is that, at least with a protective order, unlike a red flag law, there's theoretically going to be a hearing where the person who's being accused of being dangerous can show up for a hearing and present evidence on their behalf. But the problem is that judges often err on the side of caution. Even if there is a hearing, the judge doesn't want to exercise their discretion, deny the protective order, and then something bad happen and then them get accused of having blood on their hands. So judges, even after a hearing, often err on the side of caution and against individual rights. So that's the other problem with these sorts of prohibitions. At least, like I said, there's a hearing typically with a protective order, unlike the red flag laws, before your rights are taken away. But often judges are going to stand opposite the side of individual liberty nonetheless.
Yeah, and put yourself in the judge's shoes for a second. So you're a judge, and you've got two people in front of you. One of them is saying, look, the other one has threatened to kill me, and I need a protective order, and they're both obviously visibly upset. What are you going to do? I would venture that most judges, and I'm even putting myself, were I a judge there, most judges are going to usually err on the side of safety, simply so that they can go to bed and sleep at night.
Yeah.
Let me get a couple comments up here. Again, from gun websites, mental health is ours to lose, as Paul said. Their position is to take away one dangerous item. Our side is evolving and teaching doctors, law enforcement, and gun owners about mental health. And Krabby Turtle came up with the name we were trying to find the other day. Duncan Lemp, I believe, is the person that was killed when a red flag order was presented, and then when he opened the door, bang. And then 500 Magnum says the government wants control over all of us. The only way they can do it is if they have no way to fight back against them. That's a common argument on our side. It's a lot easier to cow the people when the people cannot fight back. And if the government's the only one that has firearms, then we have no way to fight back.
You know what, Paul? Back to that first question. I get the question all the time: is well, what do you propose to do? You Second Amendment supporters, what do you propose to do about mental health? And the first thing I say is, well, first of all, when did it become the gun owner's responsibility to solve all the problems of the world so we can keep our rights? I mean, we're not equipped to solve mental health issues. That's work for psychiatrists and psychologists, and it only gives me more reason to want to be able to protect myself and my family if people have mental health issues and aren't getting the treatment that they need. Now, I don't know what that treatment is, but something should be done. Look at all the homeless people we have living in the streets, and a lot of these people have mental health issues. So I guess the question is, when did it become our responsibility as gun owners to solve all the ills of the world, just to keep our rights?
Yeah, you're right about that, but there are organizations that are looking into, excuse me, are looking into the mental health and firearms. Walk the Talk America comes to the front of my mind when that's brought up. Walk the Talk America is specifically looking at mental health and gun owners. Others like Hold My Guns do some things like that, and DRGO that's a large part of what Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership does. Is looks into the mental health aspect of gun owners. So we are doing something. It's just that I think you're right, Dan. I don't think it needs to be our focus.
Well, I think the other thing too, the other point I'd like to make just real quickly is that
Yep.
We have a federalist system of government, and part of the idea of having a federalist system is that the states would be laboratories for ideas and for possible solutions. So I think to pretend that we have some solution that we want to exert or implement from the top down is exactly the opposite of how our system was designed. I mean, the states need to come up with solutions that they think are suitable for their citizens, and then those solutions, potential solutions for mental health issues, can be tried at the state level, and we'll see which options work, which options don't, and that's the way it should be with so many problems. But instead, we look to the federal government for top-down solutions far too often, and so I think we need to be advocating at the state level for solutions to these sorts of problems rather than at the federal level.
Yeah, and let's go large with that, not just with these problems. Let's look at how gun control overall has worked in the states that have implemented it. I think we can say certainly in cases like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Hawaii, California, and now Oregon and Washington State, it has failed in every circumstance. So, yeah.
The other thing I'd like to point out too real quickly before we move on to the next article, this federal judge in Texas that declared the law disarming people under a protective order from possessing firearms, declaring that unconstitutional, he was appointed by Donald Trump. And so I think I just want to point that out because we often don't see the impact of these judicial appointments until years later. But that's partly why the election of Donald Trump was so important back in 2016, because he nominated, I don't know the exact number, but numerous federal district court judges who are having a broad impact now, especially in light of Bruen. So I think that's extremely important and going to be extremely important in the election in 2024.
I remember at the end of Trump's term, near the end of Trump's term, we had stories that he was naming judges, not just Supreme Court judges. He got 3 of them, but not just Supreme Court judges. He was naming judges to the federal bench all over the country at record levels. And
I think the number was like 230 something, 234 judges across 230 to 240 judges across the country. that he nominated. And Obama left him those open seats, those open, appointments. So, which was really interesting.
Well, and to the point of
Yes.
everybody, we've all said this at some point today, practically, is that shows you where these battles are really won. It's not necessarily going to be in Washington, D.C. It's going to be in our own communities, our own neighborhoods. And that's where we really have to continue to pay attention as two-way supporters, two-way advocates. We don't have to go make a big, giant splash in this federal arena where we can, in our communities and in our states, be making differences like this, or be supporting nominations like this, or be spreading the word of how important these kinds of elections or these kinds of nominations and these kinds of issues truly are to the future of our Second Amendment right.
I want to get a comment in here. Some guy named Charlie Cook, I think he's taking a break from his Utah classes, but Charlie says, even though we have Walk the Talk America, Hold My Guns, and DRGO, whatever we do isn't going to be enough for the antis. They're going to very much like giving them an inch. It isn't enough for them. Well, yeah, the other side is not going to rest until there's a total ban on every firearm. If they get an assault weapons ban, the next thing they're going to go after is the sniper rifles, anything with a scope on it. That'll be next. And then after they get that, they're going to go after the handguns. They're going to go after the rest of the hunting guns. They're going to go after everything until we are totally and completely disarmed. So Charlie's
look
right
what just
about
happened in Canada. In Canada, and Charlie Cook is a very smart guy, by the way. Just wanted to say that. But in Canada, they just they just banned handguns, and like 3 months later, after I don't even think it was 3 months later after the handgun ban went into effect, there's a stabbing spree. So this stuff doesn't end. This is clearly a human nature thing. This is something that's going on in the minds of some people. The evil and the vicious behavior is a humanitarian thing, because you take the guns away and they do stabbing sprees, or they run people over in their cars, whatever. So that's it.
Yeah. I want to get one more comment in here real quick. This is obviously tongue-in-cheek, but Gun Website says one shotgun shoots like 638 revolver shots at once. Ban them. Well, that would be, of course, double-aught buck out of a 12-gauge, but yeah. Anyway, you can't individually aim those, so.
I mentioned Tom Gresham once earlier in the show, and I want to mention him again because he talks about this idea that Charlie was talking about giving up an inch. There's all this talk about compromise and reaching across the aisle, and we shouldn't be compromising about what sort of gun control we're going to pass. Just with the idea of getting something that's less bad. The compromise should be, okay, we've got thousands of gun control laws on the books. Which ones are we going to take away? And that's where the battle should be. And I just think that we've got all these laws. Why do we think that just one more is going to fix the problem? Yeah. We need to get rid of so many laws and put the power back in the people's hands to exercise personal responsibility, protect themselves, protect their families, and don't look to government for your protection.
Murder is illegal.
That's a good point, and the reason is because we've been in defense mode for so many decades now.
Yeah,
that we are so used to, just trying to do everything we can to defend our rights, rather than taking a proactive approach like Alex is talking about. And let's talk about what laws we're going to be taking off the books, rather than just defending ourselves. That's a good point.
Yeah. Murder is illegal. Robbery is illegal. Kidnapping is illegal. Rape is illegal. No matter whether you use a weapon or not. If people were just to follow the laws, we wouldn't need gun control because people would be following laws. Nobody would get hurt. Yeah. Let's a couple more comments, and we got to get on to our next story, because I want to get this next story in before we run out of time. CNT says there are no more inches to give up. I feel the same way. I think we're right now kind of at our backs against the wall. The one they're really going after, but at least Biden is really going after, is an assault weapons ban. I have one rifle that is not what they would consider an assault weapon. And I have a lot of rifles, let's put it that way. The AR is the most versatile platform. You can take an AR, you can make it into a hunting rifle, you can make it into a self-defense, home defense rifle. You can turn it into a lot of things because it's so modular. And they're trying to get rid of that, even though it's the most popular firearm in the United States. Well, I don't know about firearm. It's certainly the most popular rifle. And I think it borders on the most popular firearm in the United States. I just don't know how to look that up. Let's go ahead. And I'm sorry if I'm going to move on. I know we're getting a lot of comments, but I'll move on to our next story. This one is a Dan Wos story. That Dan Wos, he's a pretty smart guy. Dan, this came up on Ammo Land this week. Apparently, New York State is not very happy with the fact that the court system keeps shooting down their unconstitutional gun laws. So the anti-gun Empire State has decided in Nassau County to send out letters to new concealed carry permit holders, reminding them of the firearm storage laws within the state and demanding that they abide by them. And Dan, I got loaded up in my software here. You sent me images of these letters. The letter they sent out. Here's the first page of that letter. And it says, warning, responsible firearm storage is the law in New York State. When stored in a home, firearms, rifles, or shotguns must either be stored with a gun locking device or in a safe storage depository or not left outside in the immediate possession and control of the owner or their lawful possessor. If a child under the age of 18 resides in the home or is present, or if the owner or possessor resides with a person prohibited from possessing a firearm under state or federal law. Firearms should be stored by removing the ammunition from and securely locking such firearm in a location separate from ammunition. Leaving firearms accessible to a child or other prohibited person may subject you to imprisonment, fine, or both. And I want to put up this. I want you to pay particular attention to the bottom of that second page. There is a place here for the receiver of this document to sign it and date it, and then it's supposed to be witnessed, as well as the person that issues the document has a name for that place for them to print their name. Dan, is this, and let me ask this, is this supposed to be a notarized signature on witness, or is it just anybody that happens to be around? And does it need to be witnessed by law enforcement? What do you know there?
The document didn't look like it had any notary space there. It didn't look like it was required to be notarized. But there are two major points that I made in this article that I thought were worthy of talking about. The first one is just the idea of you being mandated to take in your home now, take your guns, remove the ammunition, lock the guns away, put the ammunition in a separate place. Just the idea of that is dangerous to people. Now they can't have access to their firearm in case someone breaks in. This is pretty simple stuff. I mean, somebody breaks into your house. I don't know about you, but I've got a gun ready to go within arm's reach. And the minute the government prevents you from doing that, they're putting you and your family in danger. That was my first point. How could we allow this to happen? And in the article, I also there's also a video on it too. But in the video, I explain that there's a lot of gun owners who have basically told New York State to go straight to hell, and they're not paying attention to this nonsense. Because what they're going to do in their own home is nobody's business. So That was the first point, the danger factor of the government making people unarmed and helpless and putting them in danger. Now, the second piece, like Paul, that you pointed out, at the end of that document, they're making you sign this thing that says you understand that if you violate this, your pistol permit may be revoked. Well, to me, that's a signature acknowledging your own guilt. Maybe Alex can comment on this, but I don't know if you'd be safer by just not signing it, or if by signing it that puts you in more legal, potential danger.
Well, I think they'd still have to show that you actually violated the provisions in the document. So I think you're not admitting guilt, but you are admitting that you understand the contents of the document. So there is some risk there, I suppose. But so you're showing that you knew about it, but we all know that ignorance of the law is not a defense anyway. So even if you didn't know about it, that wouldn't be a defense to the enforcement of the law. So I don't think it's an admission of guilt by signing it.
Beth, you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, I'm going to pull a tactic from the other side that they use a lot, and I'm just going to claim that I'm totally okay with the definition of safe storage being a gun that is unloaded and clear and locked up, but I also am going to safely stage my guns, the ones that I have for home defense. So I'm just going to have two separate definitions that I'm going to be focused on here, and honestly, that is something that runs through my mind. We try to teach people that there is a difference between a gun that's going to go into storage, as in something that's not needed. Maybe it is that hunting rifle. Maybe it's a collectible piece. Maybe it's just a competition gun that you're not going to need till next month, versus safely staging a gun that is ready to go but still not accessible to unauthorized users. So obviously that's a very important message that I have and that I try to share with others. But I mean, maybe the state of New York needs a hefty little lesson on the difference between those two, and they can continue to do whatever they want to about safe storage, but safe staging is a totally different monster. It's a totally different beast. It's got a totally different way to think about it and a way to use it in your home. And I realize that obviously they're attacking both here. But like I said, I'm trying to use a play from the other side and just say, it doesn't apply to me, because all my safely stored guns follow this. All my safely staged guns, that's a different story altogether.
Yeah. And
the other interesting thing. Oh, go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
No, go, Alex.
Oh, the other thing that crossed my mind when I was reading this article is how similar this sounds to the law that was challenged in the Heller case. In the Heller case, Dick Heller was a law enforcement officer in D.C., and he could carry while he was on duty. But as soon as he got home, there was a law in D.C. that said that your gun had to be unloaded and inoperable. So that was, I don't think there's an inoperable provision of this law. But the thought was, hey, if anything violates the Second Amendment, it's clearly making your firearm inoperable and unable to be used in your home. And that's what's going on here. So even though the gun may be assembled, it's maybe operable, it's not loaded. And to be able to load your firearm in the heat of the moment, in the middle of the night, in your own home, or at any time if your home is under attack, is just, I think, clearly a violation of our right to self-defense. So I just thought that parallel between this law and the one that was challenged in the Heller case was interesting.
That's exactly where I was going to go.
There were a lot of comments. There were a lot of comments on the article that referenced Heller, and so that was my first thought when I heard about this document too. So, yeah.
So it sounds like New York safe storage law needs to be challenged as well. I know that there are multiple lawsuits about the Concealed Carry Improvement Act that are out, including the SAF has at least one of them, I think two. But I know there are lawsuits that are trying to knock down the Concealed Carry Improvement Act. I'm betting there are lawsuits trying to knock down safe storage too.
Yeah, and we always, like Alex said, we have the Heller case as precedents for this. We also have, Judge Clarence Thomas's written decision in the Bruin case with respect to historical tradition that would also work as precedents for this. I think this is just a matter of time until one of our gun rights organizations fights it. And unfortunately, we have to fight all these things back. And they'll just keep, especially states like New York and California, they'll keep laying them on, and we have to keep fighting them back. It's just, I guess we have to work it into our business model at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to pivot here. We're just about to the top of the hour. I'm going to go to Beth, and I've been seeing on social media a new book that USCCA is putting out. Beth, could you tell us a little bit about that?
I happen to have one right here. It's the Children's Firearms and Safety Fundamentals. And this was definitely a labor of love for me, and I'm excited that we had the opportunity to put together additional curriculum for our instructors. They've been asking, how do we address families, or how do we address the questions of when, how, where, why do we talk about firearms and safety with children? And so this has been kind of in the works for many, many years now. Got put on the back burner because of a lot of other shiny things and really important projects that came up, and not knowing if people really wanted this curriculum or wanted this as an opportunity or an additional class offering that they could give. So it was a great piece to put together based on what I've learned and what I'm still continuing to learn. And I hope that really it opens up really important conversations and discussions across the board. So this book is not meant to be put in the hands of kids, in a classroom setting. This book is meant to be put in the hands of any adult anywhere that has any inkling about whether or not they should have guns in the home, or how kids should be trained or not. And it's going to hopefully try to change some minds and maybe lay out some plans and give some suggestions on what works, what doesn't work. And, if we can continue to keep our kids safe, maybe we have an opportunity to grab a hold of those statistics that we can change. There are so many statistics out there that talk about the quote unquote gun violence, or all these different things that happen related to firearms, and where I can't really make much of a difference with murder or homicide. And obviously it's going to take those therapists and those mental health experts to work on things like suicide. Where I believe I can make a difference, and a lot of us can, is where we have those unintentional, accidental, or negligent issues where especially children are involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you want to hold that book up again real quick? I'm going to put you on the screen here, solo. I understand that the model for the young man holding the handgun there, you might know that guy.
I know this guy. This is my son from a couple years back, and honestly, he is probably more adept, safe, and proficient with a semi-automatic handgun than a lot of adults, especially just starting out. He is just, amazing us, the fact that he went from kind of being scared of guns and thinking, oh no, guns are for big people, and now he'll come with my husband and I when we go to competition shooting events, and he holds his own. Obviously he's just starting out, and he's just now, he's 12. He's going to turn 13 soon, but he's still a little guy. But it's so amazing to see this come to fruition with my own child, and hopefully that's also inspirational to other folks hoping to get their kids, their families involved, whether it's just safety or whether it is something like competition shooting. It's fun for the whole family.
Sure, absolutely. And I got to say, I love the fact that when they got that shot, his finger was in register, and it was obvious that there was an instructor behind him,
yep,
making sure everything
which happens
was cool.
to be my husband.
There you go.
So he made it to the cover.
If people are interested in you checking your book out or possibly getting it, do they go through USCCA? How do they get it?
Yes, and we did a very small short run for our USCCA Expo that took place last week in Texas. So the book is not officially out there for everyone, but should be available on the USCCA website on our store site very soon, hopefully within the next month or very early 2023.
Okay, very cool. Dan, how is it coming with Good Gun Bad Guy book 4? I know 1 through 3 are out, and I've got 2 and 3 here. I'm still trying to get a hold of 1, but how is it coming with book 4?
Well, conceptually, it's there, and there's a lot of it has been completed, but there's a long way to go with this one. This book 4 is going to be really really important, I think. What it's going to talk about primarily is what I call the gun control matrix. The gun control matrix is combined of a lot of different things, a lot of different strategies and tactics that are used together to push for more gun control. So this 4th book is going to lay out that whole gun control matrix and really give a good understanding of what they're doing, how they're doing it, what tools they're using, and all that stuff. So I can't wait, but I've been busy with a lot of other things, and it's been slow. It's been slow going. The first 3 books came out just about every year, and now there's a bit of a holdup as I get more busy. But it will be coming, and you'll be able to find it along with the first 3 editions at goodgunbadguy.com. So I'll keep everybody posted on the 4th book.
Okay. Well, before I get to you, Alex, I want to get one comment in here going to Beth's book. C&T Designs and Arms said, more likely better with guns than most cops. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Let me get that button in. More likely better with guns than most cops. You know, honestly, the only thing you need to get better than the next person or better than a policeman or whatever is training and practice. And I'm sure that young man has had both.
Absolutely.
Alex, let's go ahead and go to you. Is there anything you want to promote? And I know you got in the works. There's a podcast coming. How's that going? And do you want to plug it yet?
Yeah, sure. But first of all, I'd like to say, just with respect to Beth's book, I think that's extremely important because, you know, we live in an era with lots of adults who are afraid of personal responsibility because they've never had any responsibility. And I think getting children involved with firearms early on, even if it's just about the safety aspect, they're not actually shooting the firearms, is extremely important because it gives them a sense of responsibility and a sense of being able to engage in an activity that could be dangerous if it's done irresponsibly. So I think engendering that responsibility early on, and it doesn't have to be just with guns, obviously, but it's a good example of it. Engendering that personal responsibility early on helps us raise a generation of adults who are not afraid of personal responsibility and don't look to government to solve all our problems. So maybe I'm putting too much importance on the issue, but I don't think I am. So I want to plug Beth's book for that reason, as well as, you know, that teaching children to shoot and to handle firearms safely is fun. So there's a lot of importance to that. With respect to the podcast, I do intend to start a podcast. It's not going to be just firearms related. I'll be releasing that after the new year. It's going to be about freedom in general. We're going to talk about a lot of topics, including firearms. So look for more news on that coming up soon. At this point, I'm just practicing law, helping people who are subject to red flag orders, people who have been convicted of felonies or crimes of domestic violence, helping them get their rights back, and working to help people gain back the liberties that they've lost. So that's an important aspect of my practice. And then also my family and I have a firearms training business, O2 Gun Group, where we teach basic handgun courses. And we also have a 5-hour legal seminar about the lawful use of force in self-defense, which we think is kind of the bare minimum about what people need to know about the law to exercise their rights responsibly. We certainly don't advocate mandatory training, but we think people should seek it out on their own, so that we can preserve the rights of people for generations to come. Because if we don't exercise our rights responsibly, inevitably politicians will try even harder to take them away. So I think that's really important.
Totally, absolutely agree. On my end, this is going to wrap up our broadcasting week. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, for the myriad of comments. I wasn't even able to get 1/10 of the comments that came through up. So if you commented, thank you. I did see every comment. I just wasn't able to get every comment up. We would be here 6 hours if I did that. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. Podcast listeners, thank you for listening. Please do consider coming and joining us live sometime. We broadcast this live at noon on every Saturday. It's on Facebook, YouTube, OpsLens. It's all over the place. But consider coming. If you're a podcast listener, come join us live sometime. Get your comments in. Next week is Thanksgiving week. Regular broadcast Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Taking Thanksgiving Day off. And then I'm taking some personal time off. There will be no bullet broadcasts Friday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of the following week. I do not know when I'll be back, but I've got some personal things I've got to take care of, and it involves a road trip. So I'm going to be gone for several days. That's going to do it for us this week. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.